policies. And these are in principle also our main areas of action: procedure implementation, state action plan implementation, aviation emission data management system implementation, and climate change policies. Just briefly about the team, it's not only me doing this. We are here at EASA, a team of 3, Santiago Hayaleva, you have already seen them probably, our project manager, and Rebecca Freinstein. I think it's the 3rd time in a row that I am presenting. Next week, there's going to be the 6th edition that's going to be presented by Santi very likely, and the week after. So we have 3 webinars in a row in the next 3 weeks, presented then by Rebecca. I will briefly tell you something about it at the very end of this webinar today. Please don't hesitate to raise any questions that you may have at heart to us, and make use of the chat application. And you will see on the bottom right corner of your screen the Slido application. You can access it with a passcode 84 X-ray Bravo Oscar X-ray Bravo 0 uniform, so 84 XB 0 uniform U, or through the QR code. So please feel free to address any questions you have. Santi is going to monitor these questions. If you find a question relevant for yourself, you can vote on a specific question so that it will show up at the very top of the list, and we will later on address these questions to our guest speakers today. So back on the main subject, airline experiences, and to our 2 speakers, I'm very, very happy and thankful that they're donating their time to us, 2 very engaged and committed colleagues with a long experience and a long background. We have Kelvin Lee today with us. Hello, Kelvin, from IATA, from the International Air Transport Association. Kelvin, you are looking after, you're taking care and supporting the regional airlines for IATA, and you're looking after the environment and sustainability portfolio. So talking to many different airlines, and we have Fook Chen today, who's sorry, I think I again was too fast with my PowerPoint presentation, and we have Fook with us here as the VP of Sustainability at Singapore Airlines. Fook, I have to follow what you have sent to us. So you're responsible for sustainability efforts across the airlines group to implement actionable measures against climate change. You're promoting responsible consumption, and you're trying to create a positive impact on the society itself. So you're trying with your airline to achieve the net zero carbon emission target by 2050 through the adopting of sustainable aviation fuel, which is the subject of today, by maintaining a carbon offsetting program, and to operate fleet efficiently. So you're looking back at 22 years with Singapore Airlines in various areas, from flight operations to procurement, in-flight services. You're holding multiple degrees, engineering degrees, bachelor and master degrees, and also a Master of Science in Management of Technology, Business Administration. So thanks a lot to both of you for being with us today and sharing the experiences you have been making so far. So I think, Kelvin, you would be the first taking over the floor. So it's all yours. Please go ahead and feel free to share your presentation straight into this WebEx application.
Thank you so much, Ralph, for the kind introduction, and a very good afternoon, good morning, good evening to participants on this call. I'll just take some time to share my screen, and just let me know if you can already see it. Can I get a thumbs up maybe from Ralph? Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sound and pictures very good.
Great, thank you. So thank you for the kind introduction once again, Ralph. So my name is Kelvin, and I'm very happy to be joining this session today to talk about the airline experiences on SAF. And of course, I have my esteemed colleague from Singapore Airlines, Fook, who will be speaking after this. He has the more exciting bits to share, so I'll just take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to run through what the industry is doing and some of our considerations when it comes to SAF in helping us achieve our net zero goal of by 2050. So very quickly, as Ralph already mentioned, I come from IATA, the International Air Transport Association, and we are the global trade association for the world's airlines, representing some 290 passenger and cargo airlines around the world. And just to say how important this subject is for all of us, I'm sure all of us on the call agree that environment and sustainability will be a key challenge for all of us. And this is why the industry has come together to agree on achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This was done via a resolution at the IATA annual general meeting last year in 2021. And this target is aligned with the Paris Agreement's goal to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius. And of course, it is aimed at keeping the benefit of global connectivity for our future generations. And because of this 2021 resolution, we have made two board targets here at IATA as our industry priorities for the year. The first is in conjunction with the recently concluded ICAO Assembly, where we wanted to seek government support for the industry's climate strategy, so to encourage the adoption at the state level of a long-term aspirational goal that is aligned with the industry's net zero commitment. And secondly, also to seek continued support by the states for CORSIA as a global market-based measure. We have a second board target, which is specifically on supporting members for readiness on sustainable aviation fuel, which I will touch on just shortly in the later part of my presentation. So we have seen a very good outcome at the recently concluded ICAO Assembly, where the states have adopted a long-term aspirational goal to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So this represents a very strong alignment in terms of the goals and objectives that both the states and the industries want to achieve. And this is, of course, together we are aligned with the UNFCCC's Paris Agreement's temperature goal. So this then sets the stage for us to work together to achieve this net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Another positive outcome of the ICAO Assembly was a reinforced commitment to CORSIA, where the states emphasized the role of CORSIA as the only global market-based measure, to manage the carbon footprint of international aviation. And there was an agreement to actually increase the ambition to stabilize international aviation emissions at 85% of its 2019 levels. So just how much are we looking at in order for us to reach net zero for the industry? So you look at this chart, we have a red line which represents the expectation that air travel will continue to grow in the coming decades. So it represents the business as usual carbon growth. And with that, you see the sharp drop that we expect to reach in order to get to net zero by 2050. And the total amount, which is represented by the area in blue, represents some 21.2 gigatons of carbon dioxide that we will need to abate by 2050 in order to achieve our goal. So while this goal sounds very challenging, we think that it is not insurmountable, and we have put together a plan based on some assumptions, as you can see here on the chart on the left-hand side of the screen. So we think that being a very challenging goal is not going to take us just one or two measures, but it requires a whole combination of different measures for us to get there. So we are looking at a combination of new technologies that might come on board in the coming decades, some improvements to existing infrastructures and operations, the carbon offsetting, carbon capture mechanisms that we have in place, and of course, the topic for today, which will play a very large part of this plan, is sustainable aviation fuel. So we expect sustainable aviation fuel to actually make up almost 2/3 of this industry's net zero plan by 2050. And in terms of the numbers, how much SAF or sustainable aviation fuels is expected or needed to get us there, this is the amount that we're looking at. 450 billion liters of SAF is required by 2050. So on the chart on the left, you see a red dotted line. that actually represents the amount of jet fuel that the global airline industry had used back in 2019, pre-pandemic. And you'd see how the amount of SAF that is required in 2050 will actually exceed this amount of jet fuel that was used pre-pandemic. So that gives you a sense of how much SAF will be required moving forward in order for us to reach our net zero goal. So when we talk about sustainable aviation fuel being the key to net zero, this is where IATA is working very closely with our member airlines, and you will definitely hear from Singapore Airlines later on their own plans. But one thing that we really want to support our airline members in this region is to make sure that they are ready for the transition to sustainable aviation fuel adoption. And as a first step, what IATA has done is that we are trying to help them understand their own readiness by developing an SAF readiness index with them. So we have sent out a survey to our member airlines in the region and globally to get some of their responses on questions such as whether they have in place already considered a SAF and whether there's actually a purchasing unit within the airline that looks at SAF. And that's where we hope to prepare this one-page information summary to help our member airlines understand their readiness to adopt SAF, where we hope to give them some indicators on their corporate readiness, their SAF strategy, and what are some of the availability options, the supply options that are here in the region that can support them in this transition. So before I close off, I just want to highlight some of the key challenges faced by the region in terms of SAF. Firstly, it's in terms of supply. So if you recall, we talked about needing 450 billion liters of SAF by 2050, but today we are only seeing about 100 million liters being produced. So that means that we actually need to ramp up production by close, or I would say more than 4,000 times. And that is a key challenge, especially in this region where we expect air travel demand to grow very strongly. So that will actually mean that airlines in this region will need a lot more SAF moving forward. And this is a key challenge because this is one area where we will need to work very closely with the producers and with the governments alike to ensure that there will be adequate supply of SAF so that we can work together to reach our net zero goal, which will be mostly powered by SAF. But because of that, another related challenge is the fact that SAF today costs about 2 to 5 times more than conventional jet fuel. And this is a major issue for our airlines because fuel cost makes up easily 20 to 30% of their operational cost. So if you can imagine how much this will quickly add up for their cost in order to actually adopt SAF as the main fuel moving forward. And in doing so, that's where we think that support from the governments would be very helpful, especially in the form of incentives, not just for the airlines to help them close up this cost differential, but also to actually indirectly support the production of SAF, especially in this region, ASEAN, where we see that the number of announced projects are much weaker than what we see in other areas of the globe, such as the US or Europe. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions, but I'll hand it back to Ralph and Santi first. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you, Kelvin. I'm sure I'm not the only one always taking a deep breath, seeing what ambitious task is ahead of us, and it makes very, very clear that the uptake of SAF cannot only be covered by the aviation field alone. It needs a national, regional, a global uptake at extremely large scale. Santi, is there anything you would see required to address immediately to Kelvin, or should we ask Fook to take over straight away?
I see one question, but I think it would be much more interesting if we bring first Singapore Airlines view, and then we bring this question all together. So I take the chance also to encourage people to drop the questions through Slido, so either in the chat or in the web application. and you can vote up and down the different questions that you see on the screen, or add your own question to the pile. Please, Ralph, continue, and then we resume the Q&A session at the end.
Thanks, Santi. Fook Ping, ready to go?
Thanks, Ralph, Santi, and Kelvin, especially for the introduction, and very proud to be invited to this session to share on the Singapore Airlines journey on sustainable aviation fuel. So let me share my screen first. Right, please let me know if
I will. I'm not disappearing before. Yeah, it looks very good.
Okay, great.
Good image and good voice quality.
Right. So let me just get on the presentation. So before I deep dive into sustainable aviation fuel, just like to say a few words about our sustainability journey at Singapore Airlines. So clearly, apart from the climate challenge itself, sustainability will cover many other areas. And for this slide, we just cover 3 areas in particular. Firstly, on the climate action, which I will deep dive specifically on the sustainable aviation fuel, and also not to forget our interest in preserving resources. We are committed to conserving the planet's finite resources, and also lastly, to create a positive impact on the society, especially those that we operate in. Due to time constraint, I will not go into details in the last 2 areas. But suffice to say, we are committed to providing a sustainable travel journey for our customers. Right, so back to the subject of sustainability, we are committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. So earlier, Kelvin has already mentioned the IATA 4-pillar strategy. This is nothing new to our fellow airlines participants in this call. But I'll just briefly run through the 4 levers where we are, what we have been doing, including the sustainable aviation fuel, and a little bit few words about carbon offset as well. So first of all, we pride ourselves as operating a young and modern fleet, and in our view, this is one of the most efficient way to reduce carbon emissions. So in this diagram, what we try to depict is the migration or the transitions of older generation aircraft to newer generation aircraft, which you can see right at the bottom, the 4 engines aircraft, including the 744. We're still operating the freighters, which is indicated here, but we have since announced the procurement of the A350 freighter, which will see up to 40% better fuel efficiency on a similar mission. And all in, we currently operate with a fleet of about just 6 years, over 6 years in terms of average age. So that is by far one of the most effective way for us to mitigate our emission as we grow our operation. And moving along to the second lever, which is something that most airlines operators here are very familiar as well, which is to constantly improve our operation. And to this end, we work with our stakeholders, including our service providers, the airport authorities, to continue to optimize our operations on ongoing basis, whether is it optimizing our air traffic management routines, or even ground operations to minimize taxi times, ground delays. These are little steps that actually contribute towards reducing emission as well. Of course, on the internal end, we also set up a weight reduction task force to constantly review our weight carriage, to exercise discipline when adding weights, which of course lead to higher fuel consumption as well. But I think key among this level is the stakeholders collaboration, which is essentially to work with all the stakeholders in the entire value chain, across all phases of flight. Because really, as an operator, what we could do internally to our operations are limited. If not, could be easily mitigated by external factors such as weather or congestion, air traffic congestion. And lastly, I think increasingly as an airline operator, as in any businesses, the use of data to identify opportunities to further optimize our operation cannot be overemphasized. So that's. And on the carbon offset, usually in terms of my corporate presentation, this will be the last item after SAF, primarily because we view carbon offset as an interim measures, and also eventually by 2050, it will still have a role, but mostly to mitigate residual emission, because I think the consensus is we must first work on minimizing emissions through our operation and also to scale up sustainable aviation fuel. So in this space, there are two key areas just to take note. Of course, we support the CORSIA scheme, which is interim market-based measure, and the intent, of course, as we all know, CORSIA will last till middle of the 2030s, and really is to give the industry time for new technologies to mature, and also for SAF to scale, and of course price to drop to a level that can promote a wider spread adoption. At the same time, we have also introduced the SIA voluntary carbon offset program since a year plus ago. And really what the main objective of this is to allow and empower our customers to also play an active role in mitigating their emissions when they travel with us. But more importantly, to contribute to progress made in the various SDGs highlighted here on the slide as well. So coming now to the SAF adoption challenge. So you will have seen this slide presented by Kelvin earlier on. So the challenge is huge. By 2050, we're looking at 2/3 of our jet fuel being powered by SAF. As of today, we're not even 1%. So clearly, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. So today's session is focused more on understanding, or from our perspective, what are the key challenges and what Singapore Airlines has been doing to date in terms of mitigating these challenges. And I think the key message, which I'd like to maybe just emphasize at this point of time, is that we can't do this alone, and we really need the entire whole of ecosystem industry to actually work on this issue. But as of now, I think the SAF has been around for more than a decade, but the adoption is hampered by mainly the supply constraint. But in addition to that, I think also the various surveys, including those done by IATA recently, shows that there is generally a lack of awareness on sustainable aviation fuel. And this is a challenge as we try to scale up the adoption of SAF, because I think the end users, the corporates, the public needs to make a differentiation between sustainable aviation fuel, which is 2 to 5 times conventional jet fuel price. Hence the second item, the high price, and also the versus the cheap carbon offset, relatively speaking. So those are options which, in terms of the price difference level, is not helping in the overall uptake of the SAF. And of course, the third item is something we are also mindful, the current availability constraint. It is improving. We are seeing a lot more suppliers pledging supplies that are coming online over the next 5 to 10 years. But generally, at this very moment, I think the supplies are mostly restricted to North America and Europe. But you might be aware that Nestle in Singapore will be coming online with a sustainable aviation fuel supply next year, right? And coupled with the availability constraint, there's also the compromised environmental benefit challenge that we need to contend with. And if you could imagine having to ship this limited SAF due to the geographical concentration of the producers in certain regions, the need to ship SAF all around the world to various airports, that very logistic process is compromising the emission efficiency by adding, supply chain related emissions. And the last item is also something that is nascent at this point of time, which is the uncertainty over the rules of airlines versus corporate in claiming scope 1, scope 3, etc. So I'll cover briefly some on that in a while. Before I go into some sharing of our experience so far, just to also share with the audience today what is our sustainable aviation journey thus far. We actually started this journey in modest way since 2011, when we joined the SAF user group, and we carry out numerous studies and trials over the years. Notably, in 2017, we conducted a series of green package flight using SAF, that is blended SAF that's directly transferred from the bowser to the aircraft. over 12 flights over 3 months, and coupled with optimized air traffic management and so forth. And then in 2020, we actually partnered with the airport Swedavia to actually deploy SAF via the airport hydrant system. As we all know, soon the aviation industry was consumed by the COVID pandemic and operations since then. But that did not stop us from continuing to explore how we could look at the SAF challenge, because for sure we know that aviation will recover from the pandemic. It's a question of when. So while waiting for that to happen, we actually participated at the Singapore level, ecosystem level feasibility studies with our government state partners, as well as the CAG, Changi Airport Group, to explore the operational and commercial viability of SAF deployment at Changi. And that was a very successful study, and that led to an announcement about a year ago where CAAS, Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, announced a partnership with Temasek and SIA to undertake Singapore's SAF pilot initiative from this year. At the same time, in February this year, during the Singapore Air Show, we have also joined as a member of the CAS-led International Advisory Panel to develop a sustainable air hub blueprint. The IAP has since ended the engagement and published the report online, and happy to say that 3 out of 15 of the proposed recommendations are focused on SAF. So this kind of underlines the importance of SAF as one of the key levers for the aviation sector to decarbonize. So coming back to tackling the challenge that I mentioned, the 5 challenges itself, I think suffice to say that despite the growing production commitments from various producers itself, the logistic supply of the sustainable aviation fuel to all airlines around the world will be a challenge going forward unless there is an innovative way to enable the adoption and yet achieve the appropriate sustainability benefit claims itself. So as part of the Singapore SAF pilot initiative, we have twofold objectives. So the first objective is to operationalize the supply chain of importing neat SAF into Singapore, blending it, certifying it, and also allowing it to be distributed by the Changi Airport hydrant system. So as you can see, before being deployed for the Singapore Airlines aircraft. So that has been completed successfully. But the second part of the SAF pilot initiative is to actually enable to test out book and claim system, which essentially, in simple words, tries to decouple the sustainability benefit from the actual physical use of the sustainable aviation fuel. So this is a concept which is a little bit abstract, but I think this is an area that together with industry stakeholders, especially with IATA, we hope to promote better awareness and understanding as well. So from the Singapore SAF pilot, we have generated SAF credits from the neat SAF that we produce, and we have then tried to sell them to our business corporations and freight forwarders who could then use these credits to offset, or sorry, as an insetting lever to actually mitigate their business activity emissions, which is commonly termed as Scope 3 emissions. So this is currently work in progress. At the broader level itself, apart from addressing the industry, or rather to enable an economic model to actually allow airline to share the cost of the sustainable aviation fuel, there is also a greater need for us to support an industry approach to scaling SAF. And to that end, we recognize that sustainability and climate change issues are constantly evolving. So no airline alone could actually tackle this challenge without cooperating with the government entities and the airline industries and partners, manufacturers, fuel suppliers, and even investors and the public as well, in order to create a long-term and secure supply chain to support our ambition. To that end, I have 4 principles that we'd like to advocate. I think Kelvin has mentioned many of them. First of all, we would like to see harmonizing policies across regions and market to achieve level playing field. In essence, these disparate policies have a tendency to create market distortion, and that creates economic hurdles for airline, potentially to be disadvantaged by moving first ahead with the SAF adoption. So, and the second point is, as I mentioned earlier on, which is also something that as an airline industry, nothing new to us, which is to collaborate with all stakeholders along the value chain. So in particular, the SAF value supply chain is an area that I think we can build on further collaboration, especially at the region as well. And I would really like to encourage the ASEAN participants of this webinar to actually seek out the International Advisory Panel report, IATA report that was published about a month ago. And within the report, there's a section on the airline focusing on developing SAF at the regional level. And clearly, there's a lot of opportunities for all stakeholders to participate in this collaboration going forward. And the key aim is really to build capacity and capability to produce SAF, enough SAF at a competitive price in order to reach our ambition of achieving 65% offtake by 2050. And to that end, I think we also must recognize that the current pathway or the current most viable pathway, such as HEFA, could be limited in helping us achieve that long-term emission, and more research and development efforts must go into identifying, certifying, and bringing down the cost of additional pathway. So those are the key areas that I think lots of room for stakeholders and the public across different industries to collaborate. And lastly, I think also a point that I think Kelvin has also mentioned is that we would like, of course, to encourage transitional support incentive from government, to support the SAF industry in order to promote the supply side and to incentivize the adoption. And in doing so, increase economic output and create jobs as well. So in short, basically, we must work together to push the envelope and find innovative solutions to help us meet our targets along this journey. So this is the last slide I will be sharing for the sustainable aviation field. But I'd just like to come back to the 5 challenges which I mentioned in the beginning slides. And on the left-hand side, the two areas that Singapore Airlines is working hard on tackles the supply end, which is basically to work with stakeholders to identify supply chain solutions supported by favorable economic policies. And at the same time, to continue the collaborations with stakeholders across the SAF supply chain. On the right-hand side, I've covered at great length about standardizing the book and claim framework at the industry level. At the very moment, as I speak, there are many disparate frameworks being proposed, which by and large seeks to decouple the sustainability benefits from the physical use. In other words, there are semblance of a book and claim methodologies itself. But really to allow airline as well as the corporate customers to have confidence about the transparency and legitimacy of the book and claim, we really need as an industry to standardize the book and claim framework in order to make it legitimate, and at the same time to develop enabling tools as well. So for information, we are also working as part of our Singapore SAF initiative on the digital blockchain register to enable transactions related to SAF in terms of creating, registering, and retiring SAF credits along this process as well. And lastly, to address the key points, the first challenge, which is the poor awareness across the industry. As an industry, we should step up our engagement of the public, with consistent and airline industry aligned messaging in order to align the general public to the need of SAF to decarbonize our industry. In short, collaboration will be the key to our future success. So without going into details, I'd just like to also mention, that we are committed to preserving the planet's finite resources and also to create positive impact on the society that we operate in. And for more information on that, I'd like to also encourage participants to visit our website and also download our sustainability report. And I'll be more than happy to engage any participants after this call through the email address listed there as well. But for now, I'll hand over the session to Ralph and Santi as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Fook. Santi, let me directly look at you and see whether we have received any questions we can share, address to Fook and Kelvin. Anything?
Yes, indeed, we have started receiving some questions on Slido. Maybe I take the screen back on Slido for everybody's awareness and also to facilitate the answering of those questions. I must say it was very interesting few points, if I may, before addressing the questions. And I think the way IATA has, let's say, addressed the different points and highlighted the two which are very relevant for the region is quite meaningful in terms of cost and supply or availability of feedstocks, and how the collaboration between all the stakeholders, and this is something that probably you have heard also from Fook quite many times, is essential. But also the element raised on awareness. I think this is something that may look not, let's say, so fundamental as obviously technicalities and the availability of feedstocks, but it's a mind changer, and it's an essential element to put into, let's say, our activities and our initiatives. This is probably also the societal pressure that will start making a big change for governments in a larger scale. And this is something that in certain parts of the world is quite strong. In some others are racing, and I think this is the right momentum also to facilitate. So going to the Slido questions, Fook and Kelvin, I think you can see them now on the screen. I encourage colleagues connected to please continue asking questions. They will pop as you will drop them, but we can start with the ones that we have on the screen. So the question on looking at different contributions to achieve net zero carbon in 2050, carbon offsets could be the much cheaper option as compared to SAF. I think this has been voiced quite often and obviously been part of the discussions all the time. And the audience is asking a bit for your views. Obviously, this is a changing market probably, but what is the position or at least the view from IATA and also from Singapore Airlines in this regard? Please,
Right.
maybe Kelvin start and then Fook.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Kelvin.
Okay, thank you, Santi. So I think thank you for the question. I think this is something that people usually have in mind when we present that pie chart of ours, that if we are saying that SAF is so expensive, then why do we make it the bulk of the plan? I think what we have tried to create when we put up that plan is what is currently feasible for the industry to reach net zero. And I think Fook already mentioned it during his presentation as well, that carbon offsets is actually much cheaper. But I think what I would like to highlight is what are we looking at? What's the objective? And I think the objective is to reduce emissions. And we want to do it so that the industry can continue to grow sustainably. So that is really the fundamental objective that we have. And that's why we think that SAF is key to reach this goal. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. If I may just add on to Kevin's response, I think as an industry, we recognize that SAF is a preferred in-sector lever compared to carbon offset. But at the current price level, it is prohibitively expensive for widespread adoption. So that is clearly called out in my presentation earlier on as one of the key challenge. But suffice to say that unless the industry take active steps now to scale SAF as well as to explore collaboration framework that will lead to greater scaling and hopefully bringing down price, the SAF price will not drop, will not decrease by accident, so to speak. And of course, yes, it's indeed true that carbon offset is a lot cheaper than SAF. And even in our interim market-based measure, CORSIA, which is essentially using quality carbon offset, it is clear, as an interim measures to allow the other levers such as technology and SAF to grow. And from that perspective, beyond the CORSIA period, the airline really has to scale up the SAF adoption, ambition significantly. But I think the key point I'm trying to raise is that the collective actions of the industry, especially the airline, must start now. Thank you.
Sorry, I think I made something wrong with the questions. I will bring it back, the one I just archived, just a second. I think the reflection on kind of a short-term view and long-term view is quite important here when you were replying about let's say the credits or the offsetting exercise. Obviously, yes, it may look more economic going for offsetting in certain type of projects. Although the big chunk of reduction has to come from, let's say, in-sector measures, and they have to come obviously from the engagement. And for that to articulate that is absolutely necessary to start now, indeed probably to start a few years ago already. Let me go to the question I just removed by accident. So it says, I guess it addresses Singapore Airlines, but probably is also relevant for IATA. So you mentioned the involvement of the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore in the Air Hub, in the Changi initiative. Who else from the Singapore government are involved, and what is their role? So that's also interesting. Probably is more for CAS question, but I think you can also share your views on who should be involved if it's not involved yet.
Sure. So the development of the Sustainable Air Hub Blueprint is a work in progress following the conclusion of the IAP panel. So as I mentioned, the IAP panel discussions was led by CAS, of course, together with Ministry of Transport Singapore. So of course, in the subsequent development of the blueprint, we trust that CAS will be roping in stakeholders, government stakeholders. At this point, they have not been defined. But I could guess, for example, based on our earlier Singapore ecosystem feasibility study that we embarked since 2020, that study had actually involved a greater Singapore stakeholders. I could name a few, such as the Economic Development Board, the National Climate Change Secretariat, NCCS, which is part of the Prime Minister Office. We also have participants from CAG, our Changi Airport Group, CAS, as well as Temasek as well. So that constitute the key stakeholders at that point of the initial feasibility study. Going forward for the Sustainable Air Hub Blueprint, I would envisage these stakeholders to be participant as well. But maybe because the IAP report does identify a greater spectrum of economic activities, I would imagine some other additional participants might join in as well. So, but I'm unable to confirm them at this moment.
Thank you very much, Fook. And if I phrase or rephrase the same question for Kelvin, more in a broader, kind of a higher level, let's say, exercise within the state, which are the key actors you would envisage or you are trying to engage when you are talking to state authorities and therefore with a wider policy context?
Thank you, Santi. So I think if we look slightly beyond Singapore to the wider region, we do see that governments are taking a closer look at this. And usually, if it's aviation related, of course, the Ministry or the Departments of Transportation will be the key driver. But if they are looking at actually producing SAF within their local context, that's where the other ministries, for example, of agriculture, forestry, and trade and industry will actually come into play. I think this is also referred to in Fook Bing's response, that Economic Development Board, climate change authorities. So I think it is always going to be a multilateral dialogue even within the government, because climate change is such a complex topic. But that is where we actually encourage them to start talking now, and of course to include all the different stakeholders. So one of the very positive side of this AirHub blueprint that the CAS is actually producing is that in the initial phase during the advisory panel, most of the major stakeholders, be it from the producer side, the airlines, airports, air traffic management, we were all consulted, IATA, Singapore Airlines involved as well. So this kind of very robust discussion is something that we definitely encourage if other governments in the region are looking at starting this conversation.
Thank you, Kelvin. Indeed, this is quite an interesting engagement. So in the next webinar next week, we will have also kind of this state view from one of the states engaging at a, let's say, a governmental level on producing SAF and, let's say, establishing this SAF roadmap. I think it would also be a good, nice complementary to this discussion. As you said, it is way much more than aviation, and it may make a significant change in the economy of the state, providing, let's say, these benefits obviously to a wider context, not only aviation. Let me continue with the questions in Slido. I see there are some questions in Jabber as well. I will bring it, in Jabber in WebEx. I will bring them then after addressing the ones on Slido. Well, I think this is more a practical question. So yes, the session is being recorded and we will make it available in our project website. There will be also the slides. If the speakers agree, I think we agree to share the slides. There shouldn't be any problem. So everybody will be able to consult. We will place the website address later on in the chat, and also in our communication later. You will have all that information. So yes, this is probably the elephant in the room, at least for myself. Is I like it. It's being phrased also in a positive manner. I think Fook, you mentioned when you were mentioning the, let's say, the corporate values being sustainability. I take it as a corporate value from your explanations. This is what about SAF as competitive advantage or disadvantage? Understand for the airlines. So using this as a, let's say, a feature that you make a difference from others, or something that is affecting, I suppose, your operations in terms of additional cost and being in a lesser position to the others. Please, Fook, and then maybe also Kelvin on the wider.
Thanks, Santi. I guess at this point of time, Kelvin had already mentioned the SAF cost is about 2 to 5 times more than the conventional jet fuel. So I think it is fairly straightforward cost implication to airline. The key is that it's not about question. The question really isn't about whether using SAF gives us a competitive advantage or disadvantage. It's about getting on this journey that we see and believe as the key lever to decarbonize the industry. I think suffice to say that there are increasing stakeholders' expectation for airline to step up on the adoption of SAF. But at the same time, I think I could also mirror some of the thoughts of my peers, carriers as well, which is basically we need to balance the expectation and also what is feasible economically at this point of time. So for us, our strategy is grounded on developing, exploratory tools and understanding levers, how to influence or work with stakeholders to actually solve this problem by addressing the supply and demand side. And those are the 2 key areas that I mentioned in terms of developing book and claim, as well as collaborating with the stakeholders, is in essence a collective effort to that end. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I'm just trying to say that it is a long journey and we have to start now. And no airline will be spared from the expectation of stakeholders to step up the use of SAF. So we are happy to contribute in this space and also to share our experience through the SAF pilot. Santi, I just maybe like to also take this opportunity to answer one of the questions in the chat group, which was asking about the book and claim system. And I should perhaps clarify that Singapore Airlines is not developing. So the question says, as Singapore Airlines is developing its own book and claim system for SAF, how can we be clear on the actual amount is from scope 1, reduction of scope 3, reduction, etc. Maybe it's an issue for the whole industry. I just try to shorten the question. But as I mentioned briefly, there are several book and claim systems being promoted out there. And this is a constant discussions at the industry level, especially in our engagement also with fellow IATA colleagues, that as an industry, we need to work together to harmonize and standardize so that there's less ambiguity and everybody is consistent about the legitimacy and the accounting principles behind the book and claim itself. And also to clarify that our our current Singapore SAF pilot is based on the RSB book and claim version 2.0 manual. Incidentally, RSB is conducting a version 3 consultation exercise at the very moment. So we are not developing SIA unique book and claim system, but we are leveraging on an existing one of the existing standards out there, or rather developing standards out there, in order for us to develop use case, to scale the use of SAF through this book and claim mechanism, and also more importantly through this SAF pilot, we are also developing internal processes that we have never come across or needed in the past until we had to deal with SAF. So these are clearly benefits, and I think this is just the beginning of a long journey ahead of us. Maybe over to Kelvin for additional comments.
Yes, I think, Kelvin, you can comment on both, on the book and claim and also on the advantage, disadvantage perception or reality for airlines.
Okay, thank you. So maybe I'll start with the competitive advantage, disadvantage. So I think I echo what Fook has already mentioned. I just want to say that this is not SAF is not supposed to be the key to the race to the bottom where airlines try to outshine one another, but it's really about working together to rise to the challenge together, because we believe that this is the way for the industry to come together to reach net zero. So all airlines, as Fook mentioned, I believe not just Singapore Airlines, but many airlines on the call agree that SAF is a necessity for the industry to reach to net zero. So it's not about a competitive advantage or disadvantage, but it's really what the industry needs to get there. Then in terms of book and claim, I think this is really a very interesting concept, as I mentioned, because for this region where we don't see a lot of production, even with the Neste facility coming on in Singapore, it's going to be just one country out of the 10 countries in ASEAN. This is one way for airlines to start their SAF journey, because book and claim actually divorces the need of actually supplying the aircraft itself from the airline's ability to use SAF. So you don't need to have the physical SAF being injected into your fuel system in the aircraft, but you can actually start your airline's journey on SAF. So this is where I think it's going to be quite important for this region as we think of using SAF, because even if we want to start SAF production today, it's only likely to come on in the fastest maybe 5 to 10 years. So this is really something that airlines in the region can look at to start their journey as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. And indeed, these challenges, although they might be very specific for aviation, they are not necessary only for aviation. This is something that we see also in the implementation of the Paris Agreement, with how all these emission units are being accredited and then cancelled or sequestrated, or the different mechanisms that will, all these developments that the aviation industry is taking as lead will be kind of a recycle into other sectors that will benefit from, and obviously in the other way around as well. So although we talk about aviation, obviously is our topic, but these developments are having a much wider effect, positive effect over the other domains, other sectors that are not covered under ICAO. So I think it's all the moves towards that direction are having a very, very positive effect, not only in aviation. So going back to Slido, then I will ask Ralph to help me with the questions on the chat. I think there was another additional one. I will focus on the slide, then Ralph or maybe even the speakers.
Fook already found one of the questions, and of course the network question whether the material is going to be
yes.
shared.
So let me highlight first the one I have now on the screen, and then I drop the one on the chat. So given the industry would require around 450 billion liters of SAF by 2050, do you think we will have enough feedstocks to accommodate that? Any views on palm oil? I mean, this is obviously very close to the heart of Southeast Asia. I think you already start touching this topic when you were talking about the supply and the challenge around supply, but please elaborate a bit more if you have been involved in these discussions already.
Yeah, Kevin, would you like to go first, or I can take the question first as well?
Up to you, your preference.
Okay, so maybe just from my perspective, I think there's a lot of studies at the industry level by various parties that confirm there is sufficient feedstock to meet the future needs. But having said that, of course, there are also competing needs in other sectors like biodiesel, ethanol, and so forth. So I think key to answering the questions of whether there be sufficient feedstock just for the aviation sector is an ongoing discussions with the governments in terms of policy prioritization, especially in relation to sectors that have other levers to consider where we don't have. So those are no simple answer to that question, but I think this is where the discussions at the policy level, at the ecosystem stakeholders level, and the public and the corporate businesses, everything has to come together. It's not just going to happen, by virtue of the availability of feedstock itself.
Thank you very much. Kelvin, I think
So I think, I definitely echo what Fook has mentioned. Maybe I'll just address the second part about palm oil. I think it is every country has its natural resources and the feedstock that it thinks it's best suited for production of SAF. What's important is to actually start thinking about it. And this is something that we really encourage the countries to look at, because currently there are 7 approved production pathways, but of course, as technology comes on and you look at what feedstock you actually have in terms of your country's resources, that's where you might actually be partial to one or to another that will work for your country. So I think to us, we don't have a specific preference to which feedstock or which production pathway. The key is that, as Fook mentioned, there has been several assessments done that say that there is sufficient feedstock around the world for us to meet our goal. And as technology further develops and matures, we expect that it should be easier, I hope so, that to produce SAF, and that it can be produced in larger quantities. And of course, depending on the country's needs, they will look at specific feedstock that best meet those needs.
Perhaps I could just add on a little bit to the perspective on palm oil. I think the IAP, the International Aviation Panel, advisory panel to develop the sustainable air hub, was not only just looking at supply chain related to Singapore, but also at the region. And clearly the subject of the palm oil as a feedstock came up in those discussions. I think the IAP report, which I again like to encourage all participants to download a copy, recommends that further review work be undertaken to engage certifying bodies like ISCC, RSB, to consider the sustainability aspects of feedstock that are peculiar to regions such as Southeast Asia, and that includes palm oil as well. So I think really it is about addressing the sustainability concern that stakeholders and standard bodies may hold, in terms of making sure that feedstocks are not, counterproductive to our sustainability ambition, in terms of land use and other competition with food crop, etc., and so forth. So I think it is an ongoing subject, and I think this will be an area to watch out in the subsequent review of the Sustainable Air Hub Blueprint. Really like to encourage participants on this call who have also vested interest in pursuing palm oil as a feedstock, to participate in those discussions as well.
Yeah, indeed. I think the previous discussion or the previous stakeholder or stock taking exercise on ISCC or others is going around those issues, finding, let's say, the way to address the sustainability of the different feedstocks to make sure that the feedstock is fulfilling the purpose. I think that your comment on the, let's say, availability of feedstock also to other areas, to other sectors, is quite an interesting one, because obviously there might be a case of competition between sectors to access to certain feedstock or to a volume of feedstock. And this is where obviously policymakers need to make sure that there is a clear, let's say, way to supply the most critical pathways for the feedstocks available. And that's, as you mentioned, is a policy development, and obviously it's not only at country level, has to be more at global level to make sure that those priorities are being addressed in the right way. I see the last question on the Slido, and then I will hand over to Ralph for either final questions from the chat or just wrapping up the session. So the one on competition. So do you foresee competition to access green hydrogen in the future? I think obviously this is the next one coming on the pipeline, and obviously they will coexist for some time with let's say the current SAF and the future SAF, but obviously that is the future. First as part of a new way of creating SAF or generating SAF, and then obviously as a new energy source for aircraft. Any your views, Kelvin and Fook?
Maybe I'll touch first on what I think that maybe Fook can touch on maybe the SQ or the airline perspective in terms of using hydrogen. So what I think is that as an industry, we do not want to close ourselves off to new technologies coming on board. But right now, I think the key for us, at least in the plan today, is that we will probably use SAF to reach net zero, because SAF is one where it can be used with existing technology, existing aircraft, engines, and it's just about producing it in sufficiently large quantities without expecting a fundamental change in the aircraft type, in the energy source, because that's something that when you talk about hydrogen requires quite a bit of this change. So I think if we bring the questions that we have asked about SAF, it will definitely apply to hydrogen moving forward, whether there's enough supply, whether we can create enough green hydrogen. So maybe IATA can think of creating another webinar that talks about this. But I think really it's about, we will not close off ourselves to any technology. So we will welcome the development of new technologies and see how it can then help us reach net zero in a better way.
Yeah, Fook maybe also with the views of Changi Airport being one of the hub in the future for hydrogen as well.
Yeah, I think hydrogen is definitely has its place in the aviation decarbonization journey going forward. Because I think the studies consensus is that the existing pathway PFAS, which is primarily dependent on waste, whether it's cooking oil or animal fats, will be limited in terms of reach to supply the aviation industry by 2050. So clearly, a lot of developments on R&D front, to consider other technologies such as power to liquid and so forth, which many of them requires a use of hydrogen as well. And then, of course, on the aircraft development side, we also know that there are developments by several OEMs to consider the use of hydrogen as an alternative fuel, etc. But of course, there are challenges in terms of infrastructure, logistics, supply, and of course, new aircraft certification. And we are easily talking about another 10 years, a decade plus away from those realization. So obviously, I think depending on how the scaling of SAF in terms of the different pathway materialize in the decades ahead of us, there will be competing needs for hydrogen across different sectors, across the entire economy, not just aviation. So I think that to me is fairly certain. is but uncertain at this point of time. How would that affect the overall sustainable aviation fuel scaling? Because I think lots of research and development still need to go into that space.
Thank you very much. And indeed, that's let's say the future. We should, yes, not lose the future in from our side, but also really focus on what we need to address now, which is obviously SAF and the availability of SAF in the market now. So my side, I would like to thank you a lot. I mean, I know you are quite busy in this time, and you have made yourself available for this webinar, which was obviously trying to talk to your peers in Southeast Asia to share your experience and to highlight where are these learning points or these recommendations that you may want to hint for them to also take up and continue the journey. And to me, if I may, before I give the floor to Ralph, who will wrap up and mention the upcoming webinars, is hammering the word of collaboration. I think this is the key element here. Obviously, I think it has been clear enough to say that one organization, one country alone is not making any difference whatsoever. No matter how pioneering the state or the organization would be, it requires a global effort and identifying where are the synergies and the collaboration opportunities for all actors. So thanks a lot, Kelvin, Fook. Please, Ralph, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Santi. Well, also being mindful on the time, I will not go further into the subjects. There's a lot I personally have to digest, to be honest. It's always great experience to have this first-hand views and perspective and to hear it directly from people who are extremely close to the subject itself. So again, repeating or echoing what Santi just said. Thank you so much for being Kelvin, for donating your time. This is what this project is living from, that we have people like colleagues like you sharing and helping us and the community as a whole. As Santi was saying, let me just try to share just quickly again the information that we have prepared on the next events, and I think that also contributes in particular when we spoke about, or when you spoke about the importance of scaling up SAF as a whole. Maybe, or I think the next week's webinar on Wednesday at the same time, where we have colleagues from the so-called Indian coalition from the petroleum industry presenting their initiatives, their approach towards the attempt to scale up SAF, also on the policy side. That might be of interest for many participants today and beyond. And then also hinting to the environmental reporting webinar that we have organized the week after on the 3rd of November, which is the Thursday, always at the same time at the end of the business closing in Southeast Asia. Further on, we cannot give you the exact dates, but we are going to organize, or we're trying to organize another webinar for showcasing or discussing the role of the airports as a SAF hub, talking about financing the transition towards SAF, another webinar on sustainability certification schemes, and SAF evolution after the 41st ICAO assembly that has just been closed. So talking about closing, I would, if you don't mind, I would come to an end. And again, thank you very much, and also a big thanks to the audience being with us today. And I think we have over 80 colleagues from all over Southeast Asia, and I think I also saw some colleagues, some names familiar to me from Europe. So thanks a lot for being with us again, and I'm looking forward to see you all again next week and the week after, hopefully. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kelvin. Bye, Fook.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.